Hi everyone, Gemma here, Energy Alignment Coach, and I want to talk to you today about toxic positivity. So this is in response to a question that I got when I was talking about positive psychology. I was asked by a follower, what do you think about toxic positivity? And I have a lot to say on this subject, so I'm going to try and condense it. And there are kind of three main points that I want to cover off today in this video. There is the toxic positivity that is in the spiritual community. Then I have some stuff to share around the neuroscience, around positivity, and also the quantum field, as well as my PEMS model and how I bring it all together in the work that I do with clients. And if you haven't already seen, the enrollment is open for Soulful Shift. We start at the end of January, and this is my 4-week program based on the research that I talk about in my TEDx, bringing it all together for the first time in a program. I'll pop the link in my bio. So, toxic positivity. Now, there is a lot of toxic positivity out there at the moment. And if we are what I call lightwashing, so a lot of people will say sending love and light. And if we are loving and lighting over everything, that is called lightwashing, and that is toxic positivity. And we see a lot of this in the spiritual community, sending you love and light and calling in light. And I had a conversation with a client not long ago, and they were, in the work that they were doing, they were attracting a lot of darkness. And they came to me and they wanted to bring in more light. So they came to work with me. They wanted to bring in more light. I intuitively felt, though, that if we simply brought in more light, we would be light washing. Now, let me explain. So when we have anything in our awareness, so whether this is people around us, energy around us, situations around us, on an atomic level, I'm going to get a little bit geeky now, on an atomic level, anything that is in our reality is a vibrational match for us. So if we are attracting a lot of dark, then it is telling us, it is mirroring us, that we have some dark inside of us. So I knew that the way out for this client, the way to the light for this client, was by looking at the darkness and looking at the darkness that existed within her, and to give that some space. And once we gave that some space and she honoured that, and that was why these things were attracting into her, then she was able to move into the light. But unfortunately, a lot of the toxic positivity that is out there, and that I see in a lot of healing modalities, is this toxic positivity of think positive, put a smiley face over it, and it will all be okay. And this is not how we become a clear channel, how we become high vibrational, and how we actually shift. Like on an atomic level, like this isn't like everything is dark and light. So that doesn't make sense. So the more that we try and plaster smiley faces over how we're feeling, the more we try and love and light our way out of everything, the further our shadows are going to get pushed down. Equally, whilst we want to be aware of our shadows, and I've been guilty of this, we don't want to get too caught up in them, and we don't want to become in victim mode and feeling done to by our shadows, or feeling unworthy, or feeling like we have something wrong with us. I felt this for many years. I had something wrong with me, even as a child. My sensitivities, I could get really deep into that shadow. We want to be balancing this out. And this is how I use the PEMS model with my clients, which I talk more about. It's about getting that balance right between light and dark. And once we get that balance right, this is when we start to quantum leap. This is when we start to shift and grow. This is when we start to make those shifts in our lives, in our businesses. So on the positivity front, so the reason for recording this video is because of the question that I got on my positive psychology video. And I want to share a little bit of neuroscience with you here. And what I want to say on this topic of toxic positivity, is that, to be honest, you'd have to be in like real denial with this stuff to even need to worry about going into toxic positivity. And this is because of how the brain functions. So our brains have not changed much since caveman times. We are still very much on the back foot. Our brains are looking for threats in our environment all the time, and we are predisposed to stress and anxiety. Positive psychology is the way out of this, and mindfulness as well. And with positive psychology, I call it a sustainable hack, because what we are doing is we're flooding the brain with feel-good chemicals, and that is starting to shut down that fight or flight mode. So especially if we are highly sensitive, we've got more sensory receptors in the brain, and therefore we're even more predisposition to this fight flight mode, and our amygdala in our brain kicking off and looking for threats, looking for danger, and closing us down, getting ready to fight, flight, or freeze. So we really do, to flourish in our lives, maybe not even to flourish, to function, okay? I'm going to be really bold with this. To function, we need positive emotion, because if we go along with that caveman brain, and we go along with the mainstream, and we go along with what's kind of what we might feel is expected of us, or to follow the way of being, we are on the back foot, and we're likely not to even function. So this is the reason why a lot of people out there are not even functioning at the moment, because if we follow the mainstream way, we're not going to be functioning. Plus all the other stuff that's going on in the world at the moment, especially if we're highly sensitive, that's pushing us even further into that threat brain state, okay? So we need positive psychology. And if you are watching this and you don't have basic positive psychology practices in your life, this is urgent that you go and get these now. So watch my TEDx if you want some free advice on positive psychology. You can get my 5 steps to energy alignment course, which is underpinned by positive psychology. There's loads of free help and support out there. And we want to flourish, because of course, if you're here, then you are probably highly sensitive, you're really keen to develop yourself, you want to be your best self, you've got a big vision and mission. So to absolutely flourish, positive psychology is an essential. And this is because it is shutting down that fight or flight mechanism in the brain. And it is the positive emotion fuels our productive and our logical parts of the brain, our emotional regulation parts of the brain. So we can function better with positive psychology, and we can absolutely flourish from using it. So because our brains are on the back foot, the main message here on toxic positivity is too much positivity is never going to be a bad thing, because our brains are on the back foot. So we do need to go above and beyond. And we may even feel like, we might even worry, like the person that asked this question, we might even feel like, oh, am I being too positive? But what I want to say to you is, as long as you are aware of your shadows and your triggers, and you are working on yourself, and you are giving yourself space, even just like 5 minutes a day, doing mindfulness meditation, to sit with your emotions, to sit with your feelings, to allow those negative emotions to be there, then the likelihood is you're not in toxic positivity. Obviously, if you are completely in denial, and this is where we have to be really careful, because the line can be slightly blurry. So for example, if I use like Abraham Hicks emotional guidance scale, that can be fantastic in terms of where am I at now and where does my energy need to shift. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to try and move up the scale and force ourselves up the scale if there is something that we've not dealt with that's in our shadows. So I've got my shadow work down to my shadow work or my breath work for releasing. I do breath work with my clients. It's another incredible practice. As long as we've got one of those practices in place to enable us to release trauma and emotions from our body, then the likelihood is you're not in toxic positivity, okay? And it's all about the balance. So because the brain is on the back foot, we need that positivity. But obviously, we don't want to be in denial for our negative emotions. I hope that makes sense. And this is where my PEMS model comes in, that I teach and I work with all my clients on, which is that combination of positive psychology, energetics, mindfulness, and shadow work. And it's by bringing those together at this junction of energies that we get into alignment, the light and the dark, the mindfulness to sit and be with what is coming up for us. So this festive season, I've really brought mindfulness. Mindfulness is my bread and butter. I was a mindfulness teacher in the early days of my business. That was what I did. I ran and sold mindfulness courses. And even for me, having to come back to that basic bread and butter, because mindfulness can meet you exactly where you're at right now, and to be at peace with exactly where you're at right now. And that is how you shift. So if you're trying to meditate to force yourself into happiness, that is toxic positivity as well. But we can do that by acceptance of where we're at. So this is how that PEMS model brings that all together. So in summary, in answer to the question on toxic positivity, as long as you are looking at the shadows, as long as you're working on yourself in some aspect and you're giving yourself time in the day to be with where you're at and any negative emotions, shadows, or triggers that are coming up, then you're not going to be in toxic positivity. Our brains are on the back foot. Our brains are wired negative, and we do have to hack it, and we do have to flip it, even to just flourish. Even to just function, let alone flourish. So please, 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 my plea to you is, if you don't have any positive psychology practices in your life right now, please check out my TEDx, please check out my free course. And we are going to be going deep into this in Soulful Shift, which is for the first time ever bringing together the research from my TEDx and bringing it into a 4-week course. So my research showed that over 21 days, taking part in these activities, we are going to bring the PEMS model in. So this is not just about positive psychology, this is the whole PEMS model. So positive psychology, energetics, mindfulness, and shadow work. And you're going to be supported in that community for those 4 weeks. So we're going a week beyond what my research showed, to make some massive shifts this year. So the link is in my bio. Any questions, let me know. Any other topics you would like me to cover, or any questions you have on toxic positivity, just let me know. Have a wonderful rest of your day.